I just thought that would probably be good. Hey, everybody. Mike Donahue here with Brian May, the new,
Good.
the improved.
I don't know if you can improve on what's already here, brother, but
That's true. But you've been sick. You've been a sick boy all week.
I have been battling the flu, and I'm finally on the other side. So
Good for you.
it's been knocking me and Cheryl down, but we're good now. I'm good now.
Good.
She's on the mend.
Well, welcome to the podcast, everybody. Kind of a somber podcast tonight. We're going to be tackling the school shooting that happened up in Wisconsin this week. What a tragedy. Brian and I both worked at Christian schools, so I think it hit us pretty hard. It hits me hard every time I see a school shooting, just because of what I do for a living. I'm actually wearing the West Glades shirt today in honor of the school shooting victims. This is a school that I spoke at in Parkland. It was the middle school where all the kids ran out of Parkland when that was happening in 2018, and they ran into the middle school. And 8 months later, I did the schools down there, and West Glades gave me a shirt, so I always keep this close to me, and I'll keep this probably forever. But yeah, I've been involved in going into schools after shootings. I've been working with principals and educators all over the country on school culture issues, and so wanted to talk about it tonight. And really, honestly, it does have a connection to Groomed. It has a connection to religion, in the sense that we have an answer for this stuff, and we'll get to that towards the end here. But I want to talk first of all about this girl that allegedly went into this school and shot up her school on Monday. Um, her name is Natalie. Wanted to go by Samantha. That immediately put a red flag in me, just because of what I do for a living. That she was maybe possibly identifying with a male name. I'm not sure, but Samantha, Sam. I don't know. But as we've been as the news has been unpacking this whole thing, I've been picking up little pieces of what exactly happened. They're not really coming forth with a lot of details. There's little pieces here and there. She might have been connected to a 20-year-old guy out in California who's connecting with her on these issues. There's supposedly a manifesto that's out. I've read it. It's not confirmed that it's hers. But if it could be, and I'm going to make some references to it, but again, I want to just say right off the top that it hasn't been confirmed that she actually wrote this. But obviously she wasn't born wanting to do this, right? Something happened to this girl that made her that desperate on the inside to end her own life, and then end obviously, and a couple of people she had in mind to kill a few people. Again, not knowing the details of if they were targeted or not. They're saying that everybody was targeted. It was kind of a random act. But I mean, as the weeks unfold and the investigation comes forth with more details, there'll be more clarity on these things. But what I guess what I wanted to talk about tonight, Brian, was the idea that that she wasn't born wanting to do this. That something happened to her, and it probably isn't one thing. In fact, I wrote, and I'm not trying to. This is going to sound like I'm toting my own book, but it's interesting. I wrote this book for parents a couple of years ago, called "Talking to Brick Walls," and it's just a way to connect. Just some practical ways to connect with teenagers, because I was getting a lot of parents that were really frustrated with the fact that they weren't able to connect with their kids when they turned 12, 13 years old. The kids got really cryptic about information, which is, kind of normal, and all that kind of stuff. So I began to really unpack some details and some ways to do that. One of the chapters in this book it's chapter 8. It's called Culture Change. And it's really for parents and educators on how to create a positive social culture in their school. But the opening of the book, I talk about the Uvalde shooting, because that happened in 2022, and it happened while I was writing this. So
Hmm.
went into, this is what I said about the shooter at Uvalde. The shooter died long before he walked into Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. He already decided that he was dead. So in his mind, if he was dead, then everyone was dead. It doesn't matter how old someone is or how cute they are at that point to him. No one matters because he doesn't matter. I'm in no way trying to evoke any kind of sympathy for this guy who committed this awful crime, but I think we can all agree that he wasn't born wanting to do this. G.K. Chesterton wrote this, and I really like this quote a lot. I use it a lot because I think it's really a strong quote. He said, "He who kills a man kills a man. The man who kills himself kills all men. As far as he is concerned, he wipes out the world." And another thing that I said in this book was, you can boil most school shootings down to just one thing. And this may sound arrogant to say it like this, but the one thing that I think is really common with school shooters is their perceived intrinsic value. That's why I make it a point, and why I pretty much dedicated my life to trying to help young people see their true intrinsic value. Not that I think that, we're going to solve every school shooting, but honestly, if that girl, Natalie, Samantha, whatever, if she really understood her true value, then Monday probably wouldn't have happened, right? She had gotten the message that she wasn't valuable somehow, and as we're looking into it, we're seeing that there was some troubled family situations. Her parents were divorced a couple times. They tried it again, got divorced again. So obviously there was some family dynamic in there that contributed to her depression and anxiety, and again, these things are going to come out. There'll be more coming out later, but this doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I really do believe that there's a Chinese torture technique called Ling Chi, and it's death by a thousand cuts, right? It's the idea that no one dies from this girl didn't die from one incident that happened to her. These were incidents over and over and over in her life that communicated to her that she was not valuable. So she decided that she was going to be dead. She's dead. So if she's dead, then everybody's dead, right? So she's going to walk into that school. And again, don't know if it was targeted, don't know if she was looking for those specific people for whatever reason, but she was dead on the inside. So that's what I wanted to kind of open with, Brian. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the idea of death by a thousand cuts is interesting. Two things you said: nobody's born wanting to do anything like this, and I firmly am in line with you on that. And people get to where they're at anywhere in life by a process, and it could be a good process, it could be a bad process, and that um, we all have relationships with people in our lives, and understanding, being, for lack of a better term, connected with people in our lives gives us an opportunity to be a part of that process. And the same way that, you know, the whole death by a thousand cuts concept comes along, this is going to sound sappy, but I mean, you could give life by a thousand hugs, right? It's not
Yeah.
a single word. It's not some monumental moment. It's not having the sudden, right thing to say that falls out of the sky. It's a relationship. It's a continual process of, being with people as they walk through their pain. Not necessarily trying to fix them, but valuing them.
Right. One of the things, so the CDC has studied teen suicide and school violence, quite a bit, and I pay attention to that kind of stuff because it is my world, and I want to know what the trends are, and what people are saying. And the CDC came out a couple of years ago with this statement about teen suicide and violence. The CDC has studied youth suicide extensively in recent years, devoting resources to understanding the complex factors involved in youth suicide and identifying solutions. Through guides and reports published for educators and parents, the CDC has outlined its solution. In a word, the way to reduce teen suicide, as well as violence, self-harm, and bullying is connectedness. And that's interesting because connectedness, and there's all kinds of different definitions of this, and I have my own, but um, CDC came up with their definition. It's the degree to which a person or group is socially close, interrelated, or shares resources with other persons or groups. In a later report, they identified the need for both adults and students to be active participants. School connectedness is described as the belief by students that the adults in the school care about their learning as well as about them as individuals. And I put this simply put, when students feel connected to their peers and believe that the adults in their lives, parents and educators, care about them as individuals, they feel emotionally safe. And the prevalence of suicide and school violence decreases. So connectedness is what they're saying. And to me, that what that means to me is not just like, hey, how you doing, like standing there in front of the school. As you know, the principal does this a lot, where they'll stand there and the kids are walking in and you're saying hi to them, which I think is important. I'm not downplaying that at all, because I think that's awesome when I see principals do that. I was at a school in Iowa last year that they had loud rock music playing in the morning as kids were walking in, and the principal stood there and he was dancing and having fun. And I just love stuff like that, because I think that's a great introduction, to the day, and that kind of thing. But connectedness to me is not just being friendly as you're walking in the door. Connectedness is connecting on a level that's deep, right? That where, if somebody like Natalie is dealing with depression and anger and from her family situation, or um, wrestling with her sexual identity, wrestling with, her um, her gendered identity, who do you talk about? Who do you talk to about that? Who do you
Right.
go to say, hey, I need to talk to you about these issues, right? Not even counselors sometimes are safe people, because they end up talking to the parents, or spilling the beans
Right.
with somebody, or they escalate things. Kids talk to each other about that kind of stuff, by the way. Kids know that if they, for instance, tell a school counselor that they're cutting on Tuesday, Thursday they'll probably end up in the psych ward at the hospital. So they know those things, and they monitor those things a lot. So if there's no one to go to talk to about what's really going on inside of them, they silently suffer, and these things get bigger and bigger and bigger in their head, and then they finally just call it quits. And that makes me so incredibly sad,
Yeah.
because if they had a conversation that was meaningful on a level that really connected to what's going on inside of them, we might not have these things going on.
Right. It's sometimes hard to find a safe person, right? And that's sometimes all people maybe need is a safe person, somebody they can talk to and just be real and open and honest with, without without risk. Now I understand that there's probably, when you talk about school counselors and school staff, there's probably a fine line to walk there with what your responsibility to the parents and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, where you were talking, I was thinking about even how polarized a lot of those issues, the things with kids today struggle, have become, and they've become issues, right? And so when a kid emerges with something, a concern or a behavior that stems from some of those issues, do you think it's sometimes a temptation, I guess, maybe for adults to get caught up in the fact that, oh, this is this issue and this is what we think about this and this is how we should deal with this and blah, 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 rather than saying, wow, this kid's really got something going on here and we need to talk, we need to sit down, we need to be with this person, we need to get past that and really get to the heart of what's happening here.
Yeah, I think it depends on the context. And I want to say this, there are a lot of really great counselors and teachers in schools that kids feel safe with. And so I don't want to in any way suggest that they're not doing their job. They're my heroes. I mean, I work with them, all the time when I'm speaking to schools, and there's some really good ones
Mm-hmm.
that probably have stopped a lot of school shootings. They've probably stopped a lot of suicides, and they don't even know it, just because of that connectedness, because
Right.
they take that initiative and do that. I guess my heart goes out to those kids that have not yet found the person that they can be safe with, and sometimes it is a matter of, these things that they're dealing with are heavy things. They're not there's no easy antidotes for these things. You just, here, take this, do this, read that. There's more to it. There's layers and layers of like death by a thousand cuts. There's some cuts that are deeper
Right.
that need to have a counselor walk them through some of the anger and disappointment and, maybe even forgiveness or whatever. But it's not a quick answer.
Right.
So that connectedness piece is really important.
Right. Right. It's interesting. When I was teaching, I could probably pull out an old yearbook and create a T-chart and put people on one side or another. This sounds kind of judgmental, but um, you could look around and you could see the staff that kids trusted, and you could see the staff that the kids played the game with. And as I think back to those times, or didn't play the game with, and hence were made a bit of pariahs, but it's just interesting to me how easy that is to observe, because kids are smart, right? Kids are smart. They know what's going on around them. They know who they can trust. And I think that whether it's with kids or adult, being a person who is open and honest and accepting and is being a person that can be trusted. And I mean, as we've seen with this latest school shooting, the world needs people, who've woken up to that ideal, and have moved past some of the petty crap that gets thrown around. And again, I keep coming back to the same point. I sound like a broken record, but there's a person there, right? And that's the most important thing. Your personal beliefs, your personal, political or religious beliefs or whatever, they don't matter. There's a person there. And I think most people, unless they're, clinically narcissists, really care about other people when it comes right down to it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there's no easy answers, right? So it's like that. Well, I guess what frustrates me is that, you know, going back to when I first started doing school assembly programs, I was criticized by the church world for not, coming with a message of the gospel. I actually had a pastor come to one of my talks, and he said, basically called Ichabod on the whole thing and said, the fact that you didn't take these kids, down the gym and just share your testimony with them and tell them about Jesus, the whole thing was a sham. And I, you know, when I was first starting doing this, today I would light that guy's ass up. But at the time when I first started doing this, I was coming out of that religious world too, and I was kind of, in that mindset that it had to look a certain way for it to be anointed. It had to look a certain way for it to be effective in people's lives. You had to put a tag on it at the end. You had, they had to come to Christ. And I was brought into a situation. I first started doing school assemblies on my own, and I was doing them with a team. But I mean, I created this program. But then about a year into it, I got called in to the Assemblies of God. They asked me to come to this meeting in Atlanta, and they went through this whole project they were doing called the Seven Project, and it was 7 7-minute messages. I think I got this right, where they were going into schools and providing this for free. So they equipped the local church, the local youth pastor, with these videos, sound equipment. They put millions of dollars into this thing, and they were going to give this apparatus, this whole program, to a school, to a youth pastor, so he could go to his schools and say, I've got this program, and do this thing. And there was 7 messages. They hit bullying, they hit drug and alcohol. It's basically right choices. 6 of them. The 7th one, though, was the night rally, where they had to do, they invited those kids back to the church, and then they would preach the gospel, right? And that was the big thing. And I remember sitting in that meeting going, I love everything except for that. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. You don't need to make this big thing about the night rally, because it's bait and switch, and they're smart. They're going to know you're baiting them in with these, these great videos on, drugs and bullying and whatever, and then you're going to switch it and lead all their kids to Christ and have this big revival. And again, this is going to sound so gross, but it's spiritual masturbation, Brian. It's this idea that we're just going to get off on this event, and this is what's going to be the culmination of our faith, and we're gonna rescue the world, and that's not what they need. That's not what those principles need. They need real answers to real questions. And what an awesome opportunity for a youth pastor to bring those to him and then get out of the way. Let that do its own work. Let love do its own work. Don't try and have this big night rally where you can pat yourself on the back and go, well, we led 48 kids to Christ and it made it all worth it. Why can't love just be worth it? Why can't you just loving those kids and helping a kid get over drugs, helping a kid deal with the depression because his family got divorced and he's all messed up right now? Why can't that be good enough? Why do we have to do the big thing that makes all the church people happy because you led people to Christ or whatever? And that's a relative thing too, because you're really just leading them in a mantra, right? You're just getting them to chant a prayer that you came up with that's been around for 75 years, and in different variations of it, but that's what it is. It's the same prayer we've been praying since whatever. And it just frustrates me, Brian, because if they didn't do that, right? So they stayed with the night rallies, and then what happened was the videos got older, right? So they were going to redo the videos. Well, some church people got involved in the video production and said, well, these videos are too real. We need to clean them up a little bit, make them. I viewed the second generation of videos. They were horrible. I would never show them in a school because those kids would laugh you right off the stage, right? So it's just ridiculous how the church doesn't get it. Like, why can't they just love people? That's what Jesus Christ did. Love did its own work with him.
Yeah. Just a couple of thoughts, and I'm probably just going to echo what you said. So maybe this is just, maybe if you're watching this, fast forward for a couple of minutes. But that whole idea of having the rally afterwards, what that says to me is that ultimately you want something out of that. Now, maybe you don't know it. I mean, maybe people are sincere in doing this. Maybe they really believe they're doing the right thing. But at the end of the day, you're looking for a prescribed outcome. You want them to pray their prayer. You want them to fill out a certificate. Maybe you want to hand them a Bible, and you want to get them to come to your youth group. And, maybe you got a great youth group where you really love people and blah, 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 all that. But, maybe you don't. I don't know. But there's this prescribed outcome. And now, just for all you folks out there in TV land, I mean, my spirituality is centered around Jesus. So some of you are going to think I'm a blasphemer or something by saying what I'm going to say. Is, to me, when I look at Jesus, that's not what I see. I don't see him say, okay, you say the right words, you say them in the right way, you do this, you do this, you do this, you start behaving in a different way, and then everything is going to be okay. I see what I see in his encounters with people in the Gospels is exactly what you're saying, Mike. It's an encounter with love, and then you let love do its work.
Yep.
And
love is the two Bible. Oh,
I was just going to say, love is always going to do a good work, and we can be a part of that, right? We can be a part of that.
Right.
I mean, we have to be a part of that. We have to be a part of that expression of love. But as soon as we start prescribing outcomes, then we've lost our way, and we've forgot about the fact that we're dealing with an invaluable human being, and instead we're serving some sort of structure that men have made up. And ultimately, is it just to make us feel good about ourselves? I don't know. Maybe.
I was in that world, Ryan, and I definitely saw that, and that's what I pushed against that. And by the way, that 7 project just fizzled out after 5 or 6 years because it didn't. They saw through it. I mean, principals are like, I know what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
just setting us up so you can have your big night rally.
Yep.
And no, we don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And most I don't know of any school speakers now, and I know a lot of them. I don't know any that are doing the night rally anymore on a consistent basis. I don't know any. Um, I think it's stupid. I think what you want to do is help these principals deal with these kids that are walking in their doors every day with things that happened at home that are horrific, that are horrible.
Yep.
And they've got to teach these kids. They've got to teach them on all levels, right? So it's just unfair. So to equip a principal with tools is more Christian. Like, to me, that's Christian. Like, that's what Jesus would do, right? The 2 Bible verses the 2 Bible stories that I really like, to me, that illustrate love doing its own work, is one we talk about all the time. First is the woman at the well. But the thing I like about it is that when Jesus was talking to her and he put his finger on the fact that she had 5 husbands and the guy that she's living with now wasn't her husband, it wasn't judgment. What he was trying to point out to her was she was trying to get her value from the outside in, right? If these guys will love me, then maybe I'll love me. And he just put his finger on that and said, that's the wrong approach. You're already loved. You're already valued, and you need to see that. And when you see that, it'll change everything, because it'll change your choice in men too, because you're going to attract what you respect, right? It's the law of attraction. When you respect yourself and value yourself, you will attract the right kind of people around you. But if you don't love yourself, you attract bad people, right? And he knew that. And I love did its own work. As he was talking to her, she got so excited, she went back into the city and told everybody, hey, listen, come see a guy who told me everything about my life. That's not true. He didn't tell her everything about her life. He just said the one thing, the source of her value, which was outside in. It was men. And the second story I like is Zacchaeus, right? The little, H&R, I mean, tax collector who wasn't H&R Block. They were more like the Gambinos, right? They were mafia. I mean, they were extorting money from people.
Yeah, it's a little
And
Joe
I love
Pesci.
the story. Yeah, I love the story because first of all, Jesus invites himself to his house, which was actually honoring, right? I want to come to your world. I want to come into your place and be a part of your life. And he gets in there, and it doesn't say that Jesus told him to give the money back. But the guy is around Jesus for a couple hours, watching the interaction, watching how he interacts with people, watching pure love, because that's what Jesus Christ was, right? If we do believe he's the deity, then he was pure love. And he's watching this in action. He's literally rubbing shoulders with him. And then all of a sudden turns to Jesus and says, listen, I've been ripping everybody off. And I'm sure Jesus was like, yeah, you have been.
Duh.
But the guy comes to it on his own and says, I want to give the money back, up to half of what I own. And because I'm a changed man. And here's why, Brian, because he was trying to get his value from power, money, influence. And then he was around this guy that's pure love, who's not doing any of those things. He's not gaining power and value from anything outside in. It's all inside out. And he goes, I want a piece of that. Love's doing its own work. Why can't we as Christians do that in the marketplace? Why do we have to invite them to our church, invite them to our thing, and put them in this funnel and put them in this template, this thing? Well, it has to look like this. It's like that Christian playbook I talked about a couple of weeks ago, right? Here's your playbook. Here, if you're going to become a Christian, you've got to do these things. And why don't we just let love do its own work? Right. Why don't we just love these people? Kid comes to you and says, hey, I'm transgender. Okay, tell me about that. Let's talk that through. I had a girl a couple years ago at a school in Nebraska. It was a girl, it was a female, biological female, and said to me, I'm identifying as a male today. And I said, how come? And this is what she said. She was 11, Brian, when she said this. Okay. She said, because I was raped when I was 8 by a guy. And she goes, I think if I'm a guy now, that won't happen to me ever again.
Wow.
I'm not saying she's right. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that she went that deep with me.
Right.
That's what we need to talk about. I don't think Jesus wants to talk about her identity and her gender. I think he wants to talk about the rape.
Yeah.
What happened to you when you were 8, sweetheart?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that. Let's connect there, because that's where you made this decision. So
Yeah.
let's go there.
Yeah.
Christians, wake the flip up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say the Jesus way isn't to deal with this artificial morality that we push out there, this sanctimonious virtue signaling that the church puts out there. The Jesus way is to go to the pain, to go to the trauma. Um,
Right.
And
Right.
I think that, again, in today's world, in my experience, I don't see a lot of that happening. I think there's probably a lot of good ministries out there that are doing that. I had one of
Yeah,
my old
I know
students tell
some.
me about one. Yeah. And so this isn't a blanket statement, but I tell you, Mike, I mean, I can't, in my, I don't know, 35 years at Bellevue Assembly, Bellevue Christian Center, I can't remember the last time I invited somebody to church. I mean, it was way, way, way long time ago. Because I mean, it's like I think I'm not inviting anybody here. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
build a relationship with them on my own, but I'm not inviting them here because this is a dangerous place for people like that.
Yeah.
Not because it
Well,
was not
in
just because it
fairness,
was not just because it was a church, but because all of that sort of morality play, behavior modification, virtue signaling that ruled the day.
yeah. And in fairness, there's a new pastor there who I know really well. Him and his wife I know very well. I don't know how they minister. I haven't been to the church since they took over, but I do know their hearts. And Andy Kaup and Michelle Kaup, they're great people.
Yeah.
And hopefully, they're changing that. And and I've heard they are, so that's great.
Well,
So
and
that's
and
good. So
and
in
and I
fairness, I want to say that.
yeah, and I want to endorse that. And I know some of the other guys on staff, and I think they're really well motivated, and I think they're trying to do the right thing. What I'm talking about is, in my experience in my day, and I'm not saying it was 100% that way, because as I've said numerous times, again, maybe I'll get this tattooed on my copious forehead too. Nothing's 100% good, nothing's 100% bad. But when that element persists and has a prominent place, then that's not a good thing, in my opinion, if you're trying to, be Jesus in this world.
Right. Well, to wrap this up, I want to say one more time that our hearts and prayers go out to the families that were victims in the school shooting, and it's just such a tragedy that this has happened, and again, not bring any kind of indictment on the school or anything like that, but want to just say that connectedness is the answer. I do
Yeah.
believe that on a level that matters. This girl walked into that school that day already dead. She was dead from 1,000 cuts, things that have happened to her in her life, and she decided that her value was to in its lowest. And again, I've dedicated my life to trying to help young people and people in general just understand their true intrinsic value, because you behave the way you feel about yourself. So if you belief, behavior follows belief. So again, you've got to go back to the belief in yourself and fight for that value. I tell kids every day, the last thing I say at a school is I have them raise their hand and promise me that they're going to fight for their value. And I don't mean fight people. I mean fight your own mental, those the self-talk and the messages that you've gotten through life. I got a lot of messages growing up. My mom, we've unpacked this before, but I grew up in a dysfunctional home. My dad left. My mom was ill-equipped to raise children because of her own pain that she had to deal with in her life. And so I got bad messages. But that whole time, Brian, that I didn't feel valuable, I was valuable. The whole time I was valuable. I just
Sure.
didn't know it. It was blocked. It was, it was that I couldn't see it. And our job as Christians, I believe, is to help to take down the blockades, take down the things that are keeping them from seeing their value. That's the gospel to me.
Yeah.
That's the great work of the gospel, is to help people see what Jesus Christ actually did for them, what he actually thought of them. He died while they were sinners. He said, "You're valuable. You're that valuable that I'm going to give my life for you." That's valuable. But no, unless it's Jesus plus. It's plus you got to go to church. Plus you got to tithe. Plus you got to be the right person. Plus you got to behave right. Well, you can't be gay and you can't be transgender and you can't whatever. That's just a bunch of rules that man put on it. Just go out and love people. Let love do its own work, please.
Can't add much to that, but I do want to say, Mike, I love the work that you do in schools. I think it's super valuable. I hope folks are hearing that same message when they watch this, because we're not talking about simply changing the way people behave. We're talking about transformation, and we all need transformation.
Yeah.
And that's the inside out work.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're interested in this book, this is the Value Up book. This is the Talking to Brick Walls book. I'm going to put a link on to our page so you can order it. You can buy it. If you really want it and you can't afford it, just email me and I will send it to you. My email address is miked@value-up.org. I'll send you a digital version of it. I'm not trying to make a bunch of money on it. I do have to buy them. So if you buy a hard copy, I'm going to have to charge you. But if you want to read it and you don't have the money right now, I'll send it to you. I'll send you an e-copy and you can just read it and have it. But it's a great resource for parents on how to connect to their kids. It's a moving target today. Kids are going through a lot with social media. We have a whole chapter called Let's Talk TikTok. It's about social media and how to navigate through that. There's a lot of really good things in the book, and would love to have you get a hold of that if you need it. Again, you can have it for free if you can't afford it. If you want to buy a hard copy, you're gonna have to do it that way. But thank you so much for tuning in, and Merry Christmas, everybody. We're not going to see you till next week. We are still, Brian. Are we going to do our 10?
Absolutely.
110
Are
on
you
Thursday?
kidding me? How could we miss that?
All right. Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right, everybody. Have a Merry Christmas. Stay away from weird uncles and weird aunts.
Have a great Christmas, everybody.
See you later. Bye.